So, in the mail today, I got a package from Equinox. They gave me some gifts. They gave me this scarf, which I will now wear for this video and then give away to someone else. I think a very European gift. They also gave me this real-life Eat Me energy bar. And so, in honor of that, I am going to be playing Eat Me energy bars today, and we are going to be tearing up some opponents with a crazy combo. We're running Eat Me energy bars with Atsadi. Eat Me energy bars makes it so that our giant characters are providing power in both lanes. But really, we're doing something a lot spicier than that. Sakurabru, when combined with Eat Me energy bars, pushes both lanes back for your opponent. Meaning, when you play Sakurabru in the Eat Me lane, you are guaranteeing pushing them back further they can advance through any natural means. It's a great way to come back, plus puts 4-4-4 in both lanes that they have to catch up to just to try to get back to where they were and to stop you from advancing. Now, we're playing Atsadi, which means that we need to go up the scale of 5 mana cost characters or more. Starting at 5, we have Amarok, which is a great card for Atsadi, making Baba Yaga look like trash, as it can draw a card turn 1 with more power on the board. Dorothy Gale is a great way to both trigger our first Atsadi and remove problematic characters later on in the game. Moving on to 6, we have Demeter with 2 copies, which will potentially stick around with the pseudo-anchored-like effect. If you use this with the candy bars, you're looking at both lanes to see if you're in the forest, meaning that often a candy bar Demeter is just sticking around forever. Shenlong is a huge body that can easily win lanes by itself against even really powerful boards. Finally, at 7, we have both the common and the rare copy of Eros. I would love to have both copies being the rare copy. It's all I have right now. I found that it plays really well, but it's a great way to get a lot of power on the board for an effective cost. With Sakurabru also rounding out our 7s, it's a good time to remind you that you don't need to be casting things on curve. If the first thing you cast is a Sakurabru, your 5 counters will go up to 6, and if you recast that from the reserve, you draw another card and the counters go up to 7. Taking a look at the uniques, we have 3 different cards giving us different sorts of value. The newly banned Greg, Revered Duelist. Not ideal for this deck, but a very powerful unique in its own, giving us infinite resupply if we ever find ourselves needing to get more value than Atsadi is giving us. This isn't banned for the reason that the other Gregs are banned, so I imagine it will be coming back soon. Shenlong is perfect for this deck. It triggers another spot of 6s for our Atsadi, but it also ramps us up to more mana, and has the tough 2 of a rare Shenlong, so it's hard to remove. Finally, we have Haven Trainee, which we're playing for its ability to remove permanents, and 4 power for just 2 mana in the forest can sometimes be quite good. Outside of that, we look to ramp to a lot of mana, so we can not only cast our big things, but so we can cast multiple things in a turn and continue to have good threats. Mighty Djinn is a great turn 2 play that could potentially block them in advance, easily advance us, and it's almost always going to the mana for us so that we start climbing up the mana curve. We also have 1 copy of the common mana channeling and 2 copies of the rare mana channeling, which I find a lot of people forgoing. The rare mana channeling doesn't have fleeting, and if you curve into it on turn 2 with something like a mana channeling, then you're starting day 3 with 8 mana in play, which is huge. Outside of this, we also have Twinkle Twinkle, which can serve as a mana channeling by stopping them from advancing turn 1, but also having a discount for our turn 2 rare mana channeling. It's also great in the late game just for forcing a win for us. Finally, for our ramp spells, we have Geyser, a great addition from Trial by Frost. Can answer problematic permanents or characters, stop a lane push, potentially win us the game, and just ramp us up. Super effective. The purpose of Bounce in this deck is just to buy us time, because once we get later into the game, we have bigger characters than anybody, and Intimidation helps us do that, alongside Geyser. Finally, next up, we have a bunch of cheap things. Bravo's Tracer and Haven Bouncer can be played early on or late, Haven Bouncer giving us some utility, and Tomogozin can only be played late, but all of these can be played alongside a 6, 5, 7 drop to give us something else that we're doing and making sure that we're contributing to both lanes. Finally, we have a one-off Spindle Muna Bastion. Against decks that run a lot of interaction, this can be just what we need to make it painful enough for them to try to stop our game plan. That's the deck. Let's jump into some games. Okay, first game against a Sigismar. Things that I like here. I really like the Amarok. Lets us draw a card and probably block a lane the first turn. Mighty Djinn is a turn 2 play to start ramping, or at least maybe turn 2 or 3. And I generally like keeping my Sakas in hand so that I have them available when I draw candy bars and I can start coming back. Especially, Sigismar has the ability to get ahead, and I'm going to need to stabilize. and this allows us to. I definitely want to put back the Tomo. It's not good early game. I do actually like Intimidation a lot versus Sigismar. I don't think I like it as much as my other options here, and I'd rather have like the Sokka for later than the Intimidation now. And then Twinkle Twinkle, if I had the 5-mana mana channeling, it's actually a really sick opening, being able to sleep their token and then turn 2 play the big mana channeling. We don't have that in hand, so it's a much less exciting card in our opener, especially against Sigismar. So we'll put back the Twinkle, the Tomo, the Intimidation, and plan on playing this Amarok first just to stall out. Opponent opens with a Ortis Overseer. We do fully block with the Amarok, so we'll go ahead and go left. This guy only makes a token when they're behind. I would draw a Tomo, and they don't have a follow-up play. So we do start off 1-0 here, which is great because one of the things that is dangerous about Sigismar is just explosive early starts. We go and put back the Tomo that we drew, because what we get is a candy bar and another Sokka, and we want to keep as much of this around so that if it gets to a later game and if he has Grand Endeavors or he just gets more explosive, that we're able to do our big wombo combo to set him back. Now, we have the option here of Mighty Jinning, but it doesn't actually stop him from advancing. And I do want to play a little bit more defensively versus Sigismar, even though he himself seems to maybe be playing defensively, stacking the lane, so it's harder for us to take 2 lanes. I feel like I'm going to be a better long-term game, and so I'd rather he advance on right, and maybe he reveals something that Mighty Jin can block on, and then I can play the Mighty Jin that turn. Plus, I'm not accelerating to any 6-drops in hand right now, so there's nothing that is forcing me to get this Jin out. And then thirdly, if he has something like an Order Spy in hand, this goes ahead and eliminates that as a threat. So we do that left. He plays a Overseer left, which will now have us both advancing, but we're still advancing on Forest. But he does take the opportunity to block us rather than go right. So he's playing very defensively, which is something to note, try to think about what that might mean for his deck and his goals. But overall, we're okay with that because we have we're Atsadi. We have big endgame cards. Here, drew Dorothy and Spindle. I want to keep these cards for all the reasons before. If he is kind of more defensive, he may have things like sticky notes and things like that. So I want to keep the Spindle, and Dorothy isn't as effective versus a deck with a lot of 1-drops and Foundry Mechanic and stuff like that. So we'll put the Dorothy back and see what our opponent opens up with. They take a Foundry Mechanic, still stacking left. I'm actually going to Mighty Jin on the left so that, again, if he wants to try to block me, then he's going to have to play more cards to the left and maybe not advance on the right. And I'd rather slow him down. He does play to the right, though, and plays a Monolith Rune Scribe. Unique. This will give our Jin fleeting. Doesn't matter a lot. I planned on putting in the mana, but because we're going first next turn, there is a possibility that we do keep it around and then do a 3-drop Mighty Jin to open, and then either Candy Bar or Spindle, which would set us up for a great Sokka turn. That kind of sequence actually would be great. It's nice to have Candy Bar already set up for a Sokka, but we don't have that available to us anymore because he's going to be able to give this fleeting. He's double advancing this turn, but we do have the Sokkas available to us, and hopefully no major surprises coming out. Here we draw Demeter, I don't know how to say this, and Mighty Jin. I could draw the card with the Demeter this turn, but I am going to be drawing 2 with Sokka eventually anyway, and I kind of want to ramp to a point when I can be dropping, both Eat Me and Sokka in the same turn, so I'd rather put back the Demeter, and then I can plan on playing Mighty Jin on left here, making it a hard lane to contest, as well as Spindle, which will make things like this Rune Scribe much more expensive to play around with. So we Jin on the left. Going to make it tough for him to double advance. In fact, he's going to give this up. So unfortunately, we don't have another character here, but it's fine. He plays out his Monolith Ortis Bastion. So that's his plan for the endgame. We'll see if we can answer that. But we'll go and follow up with the Spindle so that we're generally protected against this fleeting effect and any other removal. Here we draw Haven and Shenlong. I actually don't want to get rid of either of these. This Haven Trainee is ideal for being able to remove the Ortis Bastion. And then if I'm coupling that with something this turn, I much rather be the Shenlong. That's going to almost guaranteed block a lane. Whereas the Sakas, if I played it this turn, I would push something back, but I'm giving up later value with the Eat Me energy bars. So I'm going to hold this turn off for mana and plan on doing a Haven Trainee Shenlong play. And I'll open with the Shenlong, or at least I'll plan on opening with the Shenlong, so that it's more likely he cannot give this thing fleeting somehow. We're already protected now with the Spindle. But really, we want to go into our next turn with Haven Trainee opening up, being able to get rid of this Monolith Ortis Bastion. He plays a unique Ortis Trooper that's going to make a lot of tokens, all with extra counters on them. And actually, because I'm now protected with the Spindle from this, I can go ahead and open with the Trainee there. Teamwork training would just mean that we can get rid of this turn. And so there's not really much left in Ortis that's going to give us a big threat. So by putting it here, we're actually advancing on grass. And we have the one thing that's going to be big enough on the left to block and advance. So a really great turn for us. We're double advancing, they're only advancing one, and we're going to be able to open up our next turn with some sort of trainee play to get rid of this Ortis Bastion. Here, we can put back the mana channeling. That's an easy choice. We now have 3 Sakas, which is fine. And we also drew this rare Eros, which will let us actually still do our Haven Trainee play, but we can open with Eros Trainee remove, and that'll basically be our turn. But it's such a great reset, getting rid of this Monolith Ortis Bastion, putting a ton of power on the board with this this Haven Trainee, with having extra boost. It basically resets him while also forcing him to make tough decisions on what he's going to be able to do to try to stop us from advancing this turn. Very difficult for him to stop 6 power here, 5 power here, and he no longer has the Bastion. He does have a Sticky Notes, which is going to cost him extra to get rid of that, but probably one of the more effective ways of just trying to balance out the power here. And he follows it up with a Foundry Mechanic. So we trade lanes here. We're now only one away. Grand Endeavor are things that we can kind of worry about, but because we're going to be at 10 mana this turn, we can now start our Eat Me Sokka plays. Here, I either want to put back the Twinkle Twinkle or the Tomo. Twinkle Twinkle I normally don't like against Sigismar, but the way the mana is kind of turning out, like we may end up in a place where we can like double Twinkle Sokka on like next turns, or double Twinkle Shenlong, and those with a candy bar. Like I think that we can probably push through a victory easier, especially when all we need is one lane with the Twinkle Twinkle. So we'll put back the Tomo, something that's not vulnerable to removal, but instead gets rid of 2 of their own characters. They open up with Ortis Trooper, their 3rd unique. This one's going to make a Ortis Trooper every time you play something, but we go and play out our candy bar, planning to set him back 2. Now we're winning here on both lanes and forcing him to try to come back. He has a Sandman, but because of the Spindle, that's going to take up everything else of his. This does block us from doing a Sokka next turn, since now this candy bar is forcing this in both lanes. So that's something I'm going to be wary of. Draw double Geyser. I like having one of these, but I don't need 2. It's expensive bounce versus Sigismar. There's not a lot of things. It's a little late for him to be playing Ortis Bastion. If he does that, he's almost assuredly dead. And so everything else he's going to be playing is going to be pretty cheap. But what we can do with this Geyser is actually bounce our own Sokka so that we can have the Eat Me energy bars available to us again. This will prevent anything sneaky from happening, where he manages to sleep and block lanes on us and maybe get a Grand Endeavor or something that forces a win for him. And keeps us in a safe territory where everything's behind for him and he still has to match all this power. And he does. He advances on both. But we're running him. he's staying about a bit even on resources because of the Ozma, but we're going up on mana each turn and able to do successively bigger and bigger plays, and we still have a double setback, multiple double setbacks in our Sokka. Here, for the same reasons as before, putting back something that's not great against single targets, this Dorothy, and we can plan on doing maybe a Sokka Shenlong here. We'll definitely open up with the Sakabaru, setting him back 2, putting us at a ton of power, and then with the Shenlong on the right, there's not a lot of things that are going to be able to come back from that, especially with him running out of uniques. He tries to draw and dig for something. He's now out of the range where he's going to be able to do anything effective with the Spindle, and he scoops. That's the game. Okay, game 2 against Rin and Orchid. All right, so here we have kind of 2 options. We could keep our Energy Bar Sokka combo and then take a 3rd card like the lower mana channeling. Or we can put back one of these and just ramp into double mana channeling and have one of them for the later game. If that's the case, I think I want to keep Sokka to make sure at least I have something that I know will push back. Each energy bar can support 2 pushbacks, but you need a Sokka to do that. I don't think I want to keep Dorothy for that reason, and I have too many powerful other options to keep the Twinkle Twinkle, though it could have served as a replacement for the mana channeling in a pinch. Even if you are going first, you can technically mana channeling targeting nothing. But we'll keep mana channeling and Sokka here, and just go hard on the ramp and challenge them to get enough pressure on while we're going hard to deal with the fact that we're going to be way up on mana. They don't have 2 characters, so they only go up 1 here, which is fine by us. They have 1 out of 7 advances that they need. With that, they get a Bountiful Meadow in the reserve, and they're playing So. Interestingly, not the rare So. The rare So has Anchor support. Here, I do want to keep my Sokkas, especially since we know we're going to be behind. Intimidation can be interesting / good against someone trying to do Anchor, but we just don't have the room for it right now. So we'll put back Intimidate, mana channeling this turn, and let them get presumably another 2 points here. Feel good about putting back the Intimidation because they drop a Spindle. And now, if they don't have a Spindle Harvester or something, then they're not double advancing here, which they don't. So really a great opening for us for our opponent to be kind of going slow because we're not contesting at all. And they only have 2 advances out of what they could have had a possible 4. And so we have plenty of time to do what we want. Also note that when you cast mana channeling, you are allowed to look at your mana. So we've put back an Eros, a Tomo, and our other big mana channeling, which we're fine with all of those. With the Rin's effect, they put back Med Training, and that forces them to have to discard, which they go ahead and get rid of that Med Training. The fact they have this kind of additional boost stuff makes me wonder, are they running like Sun or other gigantic things? Are they just doing this for, the big anchor effects? Here, we've ramped enough, and now I can actually do a mana channeling plus Bravo's Tracer here, which will probably contest at least 1 lane. And we'll keep the Sokkas for the same reason. So we put back the Mighty Jin, and we can open with mana channeling, just add an absurd 10 mana here. Unfortunately, getting our rare Eros and our unique Bravos trainee there. Opponent drops Bountiful Meadow, but with our Tracer, again, they're unlikely to be able to compete on both sides here. And indeed, we trade lanes here. We're so far ahead on mana now, we don't necessarily need a mana anything we draw, but depending on what it is, we may. Mighty Simbi goes into their reserve. Here, indeed, we'll not put any of these back, and we'll see what they do. They play Taiga. Now, note that this gets points when they advance on grass, which they don't have anything in grass right now. I want to open with Tomo, compete over this, which is a very strong lane for us. We'll see what they do. They moon a Caregiver right, which would advance there. I don't really want to compete against this. Now I could Sokka and immediately put it back, and we'd win the lane and all of that. But I can also keep them off of grass, so it's harder for them to hit the points on Taiga by just opening with a Sokka on my next turn. So I'm just going to take this lane trade here and make this Taiga awkward for longer. They do acapella training or Tomo. Also take this moment to note the stats on this unique Muna caregiver. From reserve, it can put something to sleep, which is scary. And when it gains boost, it could have given fleeting as well. So plus it has the normal caregiver stat. So a very sick unique, especially that sleep. They put acapella training back, trying to keep their characters, which makes sense. They did go here to the a grass lane, which is just 50-50 bad flip. So that we can Sokka and cast like a geyser follow-up, we're going to put back one of the geysers and keep the Dorothy in case he does get an anchored big thing. The geyser can also potentially answer a Taiga when it comes in. But again, by going Sokka on right here, while we're only pushing them back one lane, and of course there's the candy bar, we're making this Taiga awkward for more and more rounds. Now, no reason to geyser here. We can just drop the candy bar on left. We don't drop it on right because if we end up advancing on mountain, we'd rather not lose the candy bar. We want the energy bars to be there when we play our Sokka next turn. Especially with the fact that he can be putting together our Sokka to sleep, which he does not choose to do. Instead, he puts his own thing to sleep and puts boost on it. So we'll once again trade lanes here, but we've made things somewhat awkward for them. Here draws Shenlong and Twinkle. We're getting close to being able to force them out, so I don't want to get rid of the Twinkle Twinkle, though it is a little bit more awkward with Spindle, but we could always geyser the Spindle and double Twinkle. In general, just going to keep everything here. We can again plan to do a Sokka like geyser on the Taiga or Spindle play if needed. Note that we can't geyser one of their characters because the Spindle itself is scary. We could Twinkle one of their characters though if it came down to it in a pinch. We have pushed them onto the grass over here, so the Taiga is online. But it's very possible that this is the kind of mistake that I make all the time against Sokka, and it's one of the advantages of just putting your opponent in awkward situations is the state at the beginning of the round is not the state at the end of the round. So they're probably thinking they can double into this lane and be advancing the Taiga, but that changes from character to character because of the Sokka, which puts them in an awkward spot. Here, we have a geyser that we could play. We could Twinkle, or we can just develop the Spindle, or we could play the Sakabaru. The Sokka here, I think, is the best play. They only have 2 mana left, and that will potentially force an advance here if they don't have a beauty sleep. And we draw our last counter from Atsadi, getting an Amarok. That'll probably be what we mana next turn. In the later game, the Amarok isn't nearly as good. It's very possible they put it to sleep. If they put it to sleep, you're just kind of screwed, as you can't play additional characters into its lane. So we'll put back the Amarok. Now here, I think I'm just going to develop a candy bar first. The other options we have are like Sokka or maybe Shenlong, but I really want to see what they do. They have 2 cards in hand. It's really just one of our cheaper proactive things. They do drop Lyra Festival though, which we have a lot of answers for. We could intimidate it, we could geyser it, but first we'll go ahead and drop our own protection in the Spindle as we're closing out the game. And now that we've seen this Lyra Festival, we kind of want to have protection against Beauty Sleep, which is like the most likely thing to be played at this festival that can also like shut out our wins. So depending on what he follows this up with, which he currently has Fleeting, but if this is Beauty Sleep and Spindle Harvester, then he would win. So we can't afford to just drop the Shenlong, for example. Now, we have the options here. We could Intimidate on the festival, which would leave us open for a Sakurabru, which could threaten to win. We could also Shenlong and just try to push for a kill, but if he has Beauty Sleep and any one-drop character, then you can put that one-drop character here, get the Icebound Taiga Dragon, which will give it Anchor, and he'd have lethal. Similarly, if we Intimidate, then I feel kind of forced to follow up with the Sakurabru. But if he does just drop a character, he can put the dragon in this lane, which would force us to get rid of our candy bar. It's not that it's a fine move, but what I'm really scared of is just that we know this turn we need to either Geyser or Intimidate on the festival, because otherwise we're putting ourselves at risk. And I may also need to do that next turn. And I'd rather start the turn with the cheaper option available to me, especially as I'm potentially putting out a lot of power, now Spindle protected, to try to win the game. So I'm going to Geyser here, kind of give up that he may advance on these. The threat of me losing now isn't around my things getting slept and him winning, it's more around Festival killing us. So the Geyser will let us have Intimidate up, and we can try to win next turn depending on what he wants to do. Especially since he's low on characters, this is going to be gone. And yeah. He actually Beauty Sleeps, though, to keep things around, which is interesting. Makes it so that he has these bodies available to try to trigger the festival. Oh, he has 2 Beauty Sleeps, so this keeps the fleeting thing around. And it also tries to, he doesn't have enough bodies to trigger festival right now. And so he's kind of relying on the fact that he has enough characters to win it. And if he loses some of these, he's no longer in that place. So keeping both these around means that any other character will be enough to finish things off by providing Anchored from the Taiga. Though I'm not sure that he really needed to keep this Dracana around. For ourselves, I don't want this Mighty Djinn, so I'll put it back. He does drop a Harvester. Interestingly, he does not set off the Taiga this turn, which makes sense. Like, the idea here is he now has everything he needs for lethal. And if we put him off of it this turn, the next turn he has the Taiga as backup for lethal. So what we need to do is keep in mind that all he has is Festival, Sleep, Sleep. These sleeps on us are going to cost 5 mana. So once he uses one of these, we're kind of in the clear. So what we'd like to do is Intimidate on the Festival once it's played, which means we need to stall now, and then probably finish with like Shenlong to force a victory on both sides, which will have tough 4 really. So we'll open with Sokka on the left as a stall move, a nice 4-mana stall move. They play the Festival out, which does draw them a card. I should have remembered that, but either way, Shenlong here now has tough 4 and can't be targeted by any of his things, and we have the Intimidate to clear things off. Even if he drew another Festival, he wouldn't, like, he needs to get the sleep, and we just have him in a checkmate here. So Intimidate closes it out, and we take the win versus Festival Rin. Okay, game 3. We now have the Trial by Frost blue boards available to us for this game. At this point, we have heard the announcement of the bans, but they're not in effect, so we're still continuing to play our same list for the purpose of the content. One of our uniques is technically banned, but it's not actually like the broken ones that they're worried about. let's take a look at our hand against Nevanka. Tends to be a kind of controlling hero. Here, love a turn 1 Amarok, love a turn 2 Mighty Jin. Jin ramping us to 6 is very nice for the Shenlong, and so I kind of like this 3, 4, 6 play. You could alternatively Geyser instead of Mighty Jin, especially since he's going first, but I'd rather put power pressure on the board. And I think that is a pretty clear sequence that we like, with nothing else like super exciting available to us. And we'll just follow that, kind of let it play itself. Amarok draws an Intimidation. A good Nevanka player doesn't use their dice roll when they don't need to, potentially risking a 1. It's not worth the high roll of the 6. Here, we can put back Mana Channeling. We did draw our Unique. They open with Mage Dancer, which we'll go ahead and compete against. He may be able to beat it, but I'd rather him put a lot of resources into trying to win this right lane rather than making it an easy give up with just water on the left. Either way, he hooks it so that he's stopping this, and maybe he'll be able to get both either way here, which Martingale, it seems like it wouldn't at first, but Nevanka indeed will make this Martingale a threat, so he's double advancing here. Opponent's double advancing here, and they now have 3 out of 7 advances, but we're going up to 6 mana. Love seeing hooked. Really, I just love it as a card. I think it's underrated. Not going to be very effective, though, against a Shenlong. It's going to be huge no matter where it lands. Here, though, we can put back the big Mana Channeling. We're going to be wanting to cast our Shenlong for a little bit, and I don't know when we're going to have the opportunity to spend 5 mana just on ramp, now that Shenlong is our ramp plan. Here, we'll go and drop the Shenlong. On the left is, maybe a little bit, it's close to the right side. Both of them kind of block him equivalently. He's not going to get above 8 mountain, and the 6 water is the same. But if we do advance on this lane, we'll move out of the only grass lane into potentially something that's a little bit more flexible. In fact, this is either going to be mountain or it's going to be water forest, both of which Shenlong will be better on, and we'll leave this easier to advance lane available to us. He indeed doesn't compete against the Shenlong and just takes the right lane with an Inkcaster, and we'll see what he returns. Here, we'll go and put something back. Intimidation is a great thing to put back since it's fleeting. We don't really lose any value from it, and we can plan on putting the Amarok into discard. We're getting to that later point in the game where things Amarok can be risky to have there. Demeter is put into our mana with the Shenlong. Martingale to our opponent's hand. Now, once again, we don't need the Amaroks. Would love to dodge a Tanuki here. Indeed, they just open up with a Martingale, and we can go ahead and Shenlong in that to block that free advance for him. He does play Cloth Cocoon, which with the tough 2 is going to use all of his mana. So he'll get the advance there. We can put the Tracer, which has similar fleeting value, and get another ramp here. This is a sick double ramp that we got. Second Demeter into our mana as a result. But now, we have this candy bar. They're only 2 away. Small Step is a threat. They get rid of Inkcaster, so that kind of makes me worried that they're just trying to take 1 lane and then Small Step. Luckily, we did just beat out a Cloth Cocoon, and now we're at the 10 mana to Candy Sokka. Here, I either want to get rid of, the Tomos feels good here at 10 mana. I either want to get rid of the Eros or the Garrick. We are running out of, I'm starting to see a little bit of a lack of our future. So we'll put back the Eros this turn, still trying to maybe get resupply options out of this in case we need to dig for something in an emergency, especially as we're currently fighting over blue-green right here. But this turn is going to be a Candy Bar Sokka turn. They drop Martingale. We double push them back. 1 is going to be enough with the Martingale to have impact. and they finished off with a Hather. They're gonna have to discard this turn, as will we, on two things. We can go ahead and get rid of this Saka and the Intimidate, giving us things to contest lanes and having another candy bar for another Saka. Now we have enough fuel that we can go ahead and put back this Greg. We really want power. We have just like a plethora of options here to put things on the board, so we'll just start throwing out tracers and our cheaper options that are going to have the most pressure to stall out and see what they do. I don't want to get rid of both my tracers though, as I have those options, and so with our second play, we drop our biggest thing. They can still hook to move us into one lane here. Nothing that we play here can force two lanes. No matter what we put something in, or if we drop a candy bar. It's just going to make it so he can hooked and we trade 1-1. So with that in mind, I'm just going to pass. And while we're not winning on left, he's going to have to discard down to 2 anyway, so it's either getting rid of the hooked or one of the characters. We'll get 1 lane advance. And we save all of our resources in hand and make this trade. Indeed, the hooked is gone, but we still have our card. Here, Amarok is bad in the late game, so we'll get rid of it. They don't get rid of anything. A lot of cheap options available to them, so they can potentially play out their hand. Now is the time when I can play out this candy bar. I won't open with it. I'll again open up with my cheapest thing to stall out a little bit. And just, put bodies on board, see what they have. Now, the main thing I want to be wary of here is sleep effects. What I don't want to happen is I drop Shenlong and they abuse that to double advance and tie things up. So, for example, if they had a Sandman, they could Sandman on the right, put the Shenlong to sleep, Nevanka it to tie up this lane, and if it's a unique one, maybe even win the lane. And then high roll over here would block an advance and we'd be tied up. And going tied up into the final round when they may have small steps is too risky. So I don't want to play the Shenlong. Instead, I can just drop the character that I do have, Trainee, see what they do. From here, I can Candy Bar on the right. If I do that, then again, a Sandman potentially beats me by playing Sandman in this lane. I guess that actually only, Sandman in this lane gets enough power to block and advance on water once you have Nevanka. So I don't want to Candy Bar. If I Geyser, however, and I return this Esmeralda to his hand, then I don't think he can advance and stop me. Sandman would put this to sleep and would not be enough to get, he'd get 2, would not be enough to advance and block me on left. He could block me 2, 5, 6 with Nevanka, but that's fine. So I'll Geyser the Esmeralda, potentially be threatening lethal. He indeed has a Sandman, which he uses and he drops sleeping here. And as long as he doesn't roll a 6, he'll tie on the left. Almost rolls a 6, but it's enough. And we go into one more round. We'll get rid of the Mighty... we could get rid of the Mighty Djinn, and that would give us enough 5, 11, 14. But we just keep everything in hand so that we have more options in the future. He does Off You Go us. But Esmeralda or Mystery card in hand, we just need to get bodies on board now. I'm fine throwing out the Shenlong. This is kind of the kill turn. He hits Esmeralda. We can just keep throwing things out. He just doesn't have enough to stop us here. And that's game. GG. That's the deck. had a lot of fun playing it, and the Sakurabu Eat Me Energy Bars combo just feels really great. It's good to have Atsadi be viable now, and I'm looking forward to playing a lot more Trial by Frost. If you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, or subscribe. Trying to get the algorithm to pick me up. Yeah, thank you. Until next time, I'm Elio.